Okay, chapter 14 is something of a smorgasbord. The first thing are these I class or I type, I stem, third declension nouns. So don't get this confused. We have talked about I stem third conjugation verbs. Totally different. Those are the ones that have that extra I that shows up, fugio, fugere. This is nouns. So there's a set of nouns that have an extra I showing up in the third declension. Reminder, first declension is like femina, feminae. Second declension is like amicus, amici. And third declension, here as well, is like rex, regis, which is to say the nominative singular is, there it is, rex regis. The nominative singular is unpredictable. Okay, so there are a number of these that have an extra I that pretty much shows up just in the genitive plural. So rex genitive plural is regum, but kiwis, note right here, kiwis genitive plural is kiwium. Just an extra I. Not that difficult. There are some rules you can learn to basically be able to predict what third declension nouns are this type. And we'll look at them in a second. But just note, kiwis is your nominative genitive, so that'll be your dictionary entry. Can't tell from that, right? Looks just like rex, regis, or any other third declension, which is to say you have an unpredictable nominative singular followed by a genitive singular in is. So you cannot detect I class third declension nouns, I stem third declension nouns from the lexical forms, from the nominative singular and genitive singular, without learning some additional rules. Importance level of this is relatively low, so don't stress it too much, but I'm going to teach you these rules. You should be aware of these rules, you should remember these rules. And I think almost where this is more important than the genitive plural, because the genitive plural doesn't look like anything else, it's really easy to recognize. The more important thing is that these, in some extremely popular common teaching texts like Virgil's Aeneid and other places like that, these nouns often show up with an accusative plural, is. Accusative plural that looks like a genitive or like a dablative of the second or first and second declension. So that's not going to happen a lot in this textbook, but the second you start reading the Aeneid, this is going to show up all over the place. This use of is instead of es for the accusative plural. They kind of underplay that, although they say it's right here. Though rarely appearing in this book, was frequently employed in Republican literature and into the Augustan period. So that's like the most commonly read and taught Latin texts, right? Okay, so note it's just the genitive plural pretty much, and then here are the three rules. The first is parasyllabic masculine and feminines. That is, masculine and feminines that have the same number of syllables in their nominative singular, in the genitive singular. Sorry. These most common, the easiest of these to spot are the ones that look like hostis hostis or nawis nawis. That is, nouns where the nominative and genitive singular are identical and therefore have the same number of syllables. Easy to spot. A little bit harder to remember with words like moles, molis. The next one on that list. Right, here we have, they're parasyllabic, same number of syllables, 2 and 2, but a little bit harder to remember what's going on there. But the genitive plural for all these is going to be molium, navium, and hostium, okay? Alright, the others are monosyllabic nominatives ending in s or x. So ars, artis, dens, dentis, nox, noctis, arx, arctis. Now when I say monosyllabic nominatives, we're not saying, this is not like comparing nominative and genitive like the last one was, parasyllabic. We're saying they're equal number of syllables in the nominative and the genitive. We're just saying one syllable in the nominative. Ars, dens, nox, arx. These are all going to be I class. So those are the easy two rules to remember. you should be able to internalize those. Those are great uh, and easy to remember. These recognize these monosyllabic ending in S and X. And X, for the record, is just an S with a glottal stop in front of it, a k, g or k sound. So it's really just words ending in S, and X is one of those words. Or isn't it? X is not its own letter, and for morphological purposes, it's useful to think of S, as you can see right here, as a C with an S after it. Okay, the third rule is a little hard to remember, because it depends on you remembering the gender of the third declension. But neuter I stems ending in all, R, or E. These are the hardest to remember. I'd say better off just memorizing individual examples and remembering there is a third rule, but animal, extremely common word. Exemplar, less common probably. Mara, very common. Um, uh, Best just to remember that these words are a little funny. These are I-class words, that they belong to that third rule that you can't quite ever remember all the parts to. That's kind of how I often think about it. It's the all are in the neuter third declension. Other things that are important for this chapter is a introduction to several independent ablative case uses. So we've talked about this before. I kind of taught the ablative this way from the beginning. They want you to know there are independent uses of the ablatives, not just with prepositions, where it can be means and manner and instrument. Take a look at that. And then this word is an extremely annoying word that looks like forms of we're outside of the nominative. So pay attention to the irregular forms of wees. Go through these and see if you can pick out which words are wees and which words are we're. Yeah, so that, just take note of that. And that's pretty much it. Note, I guess one last thing on wees, note that it's a wees wees. It's a third declension. So despite the fact that it's going to take strange forms, you can distinguish it from we're because we're is a second declension with the R class second declensions. So be aware of those. Kind of all over the place today, but see you in class.